Let's get this thing going then. With us here today is, my name is Joe McConnell, Gary DeRemer. And Gary and I are more attuned to getting rid of invasive species than we are of speaking, so just stick with us a while here. And then we've got Robin Heron, our horticulturist, and our commissioner, or chairman of the commission, Nancy Gray, who is a wonderful chairperson and a great organizer. And we're joined today by Helen Thomas, who is our videographer for the Lanier Library. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the Oral History Roundtable dedicated to preserving the rich history, stories, and memories of Tryon Cemetery. Places like Tryon Cemetery are more than just landmarks. They are resting places of our ancestors, the anchors of our community genealogy, and a physical record of the people who built this area. Today we are incredibly fortunate to be joined by 4 individuals who hold pieces of history in their memories. We're going to start today with Ambrose Mills. His family has probably the longest history of any family in Polk County, going back to centuries and more, including before the Revolutionary War. There's probably not another family in Polk County that has as much history as the Mills do. Ambrose is a true native son and a member of the Cemetery Commission as well. So Ambrose, we'd like to start with you. We're asking everybody to speak for about 10 minutes. Welcome Jean, Ambrose's wife as well, and tell us some of the things that you remember most about the first times you visited the cemetery and when that might have been, and some of the individuals that are buried there and the struggles that the cemetery has been through in the last decades or so. And so we'll turn it over to you, and we're welcome and we're mighty happy to have you and Jean both here today.
Thank you. Happy to be here with you. The way I wanted to approach this is find some individuals that I know something about their history and how they affected the cemetery. One of the first is A.J. Lanier. He came from France to the Biltmore estate to set up a vineyard for the Biltmore estate. And when that was finished, he came to Tryon. He started his own vineyard and remained here until he died. On his tombstone, it said he regrets that he never was able to return to his beloved France. Another special one was Henry Garajus. He introduced anesthetic obstetrics in the USA, and he's buried there. A fellow named Pig Williams. Pig was not a negative. He was very well known and well liked. When he was ready to board the bus to go in preparation for invasion of Japan. My mother knew him. He got down and kissed the sidewalk in front of Bristoldine's and said, "I love you. I'll never see you again." And alas, that came to be true. In July 10th, 1943, his ship was bombed by German Ju-88 bomber who dropped 4 250-pound bombs, 2 of which landed in the stern area, which housed the ammunition that they were bringing, and detonated it all in such a blast that it blew a huge hole in the side of the ship, so that the ship sunk in 2 minutes. Extraordinary, but it was an extraordinary hole in this ship. At one point, the cemetery was overgrown and an embarrassment. A former resident named Alan Mebane had come to see about some of his loved one, and he was embarrassed. It was so bad. Who's critical in this cemetery was Lars Olsen. He took responsibility, and it was in his honor that Captain Chapman and I erected a flagpole and dedicated it to him for his leadership in the revival of the cemetery. Anything else?
Thank you.
Joe?
Thank you, Ambrose. We're delighted to have your memories recorded here today. I want you to keep listening, and anything that you want to jump in and add, we would love to hear it. We're going to go to Francis McCain now. Francis has been involved in this community and has been in so many different organizations, too many to list. But her knowledge of Tryon and its history has been a great boon for us on the commission, because most of the information that we have has come from Francis. Francis, I know you've been here for a long time, and we'd like to hear from you about your early memories of the cemetery and people or events that were special to you in your life in regards to the cemetery.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to say thank you all so much for including me in this, I think, a historical event. Really, I do. I think it is. But at any rate, I really feel very much at home because I served on the board of Lanier Library for 6 years and did the brown bag programs and the special event programs for 6 years. So I'm home now. But at any rate, I want to talk about my great-grandfather, John B. Cleveland, because he came up here, and this, I didn't know this, except John Vining. You know how it's wonderful how people just look out after you, you know, and they say, he sent me this in the mail, a clipping, that my great-grandfather, John B. Cleveland, who is my mother's grandfather, my mother was a Scriven, and her mother was a Cleveland, from Spartanburg. But at any rate, John Vining sent this article, and it tells about John B. Cleveland as a young boy came up to this area, and he came with his grandfather and great-grandfather, and I think an uncle came with him too. I couldn't find the article, so I wanted to bring it, but I couldn't find it. But at any rate, they came up and they just started to explore the area, and it was a wilderness actually. And there was one house, a log cabin sitting up way up on a hill. And so they, after they got through plundering around, and I think probably, now that I know some things, that probably they were interested in how they could get the railroad to come through. That's probably what they were snooping about, because my great-grandfather was an investor in property and an attorney and that sort of thing. But at any rate, so they got hungry, and so as they started to leave, they thought, well, maybe they may have some food up there at that cabin. So let's go up there and see. And so they went up there, knocked on the door. Man came to the door, and they asked, my grandfather asked, did we have any food? We're hungry. And he said, we'll pay you for it. And he said, no, I'm sorry, we don't. And so my great-grandfather and his party left and went on down the hill. And as they were going down the hill, then the man comes out of his house and he yells down, he says, wait a minute, would you like some whiskey? He said, I'll be glad to sell you some whiskey. And my great-grandfather didn't take to that too much, because whiskey on an empty stomach in the morning wouldn't do so well. But at any rate, I just can imagine that my great-grandfather had no idea that when he got to be grown and as a man, then his daughter, Frances Leonard Cleveland, married Jim Scriven. And then they bought the Scriven Plantation, which belonged to Ambrose Mills' ancestors. And and I can't remember now, Ambrose could tell me, I think it was William Mills that owned the plantation at one time, but it was Marvel Mills that lived there. But anyway, Marvel Mills died intestate, and so then Mr. Ballinger, who was the mayor at that time, Mr. Ballinger decided to buy it, so he bought it, and I don't know, he didn't do anything with it for a couple of years, but then he sold it to my great-grandfather, John B. Cleveland. And so it was in our family for, I think it was 70 years. But at any rate, I thought that was kind of interesting, because John B. Cleveland is not buried at the cemetery. My grandfather, great-grandfather Scriven is, and my grandmother, they're all buried there. And then my Aunt Amelia, she's buried at the Tryon Cemetery. But John B. Cleveland gave the money for the first waterworks in Tryon. And so our family had free water as long as we lived there. And after my grandmother died, my grandfather rented it out, and I guess it was my dad that did that. But at any rate, they rented the place out, and so the man had free water, and my brothers and I were playing down in the creek, and we could smell something really, really strong. And so we went home and told my dad, and said, Dad, there's something really bad in the creek over there. Daddy went over there, and the man had a big moonshine still going on in the house. He was making liquor. That was a big money thing back then, I guess. But anyway, he was making liquor, and so Dad turned him in. And he burned one of our barns. That man was mad at us, so he burned one of the barns. So, but anyway, so that's that situation. But then I think we could go on to get to the cemetery. You have to kind of talk about Holy Cross Episcopal Church, because the first church, Holy Cross on Melrose Avenue, was before the library, before this library, and it was built in 1876, and on the property was a graveyard. And so the first building was not the only building that Holy Cross was going to build. They built that one, and then the second one was another building, and it turned into what is now the chapel. And then they later built, I guess they called it the parish house. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. And but the thing is that there were graves on the property, and when they were doing all that building, then they had to dig up the graves. So in the meantime, during all this, from 1876, then we had Lemuel Wilcox, because I'd never heard of much about Lemuel. Is it Lemuel Wilcox? Is that how you say it? Yeah, you would know. But at any rate, he was involved with the family of the Maccabee house, which was Mimosa Inn, and he was very generous. I just can't believe it. He donated all this Melrose Avenue from one end to the other. He gave all the property. He laid out the town, and he laid out the cemetery, the property of the cemetery. And it was a good thing he did, because he died in 1900, and this was done in 1900, so he got it done just in time to be buried. So Mr. Wilcox is buried there, but he was a very generous man, and he contributed a lot to forming Tryon and the cemetery. And so let's see, we go from there, and I think everybody probably knows a lot about how we formed the library with the 5 ladies. Do we want me to talk about that a little bit? Okay. There were only, well, let's see, first the railroad comes to Tryon, and then there was, after the railroad comes, then that causes other people to come, and you'll have a lot of arguments with people that are natives of this area that the train is what caused the growth of Tryon, but you'll have a lot of people say, no, it wasn't. It was the climate and the people and grapes, and so you'll get different versions of that. But at any rate, there was a lady named Mary and Lucy Leduc. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Am I pronouncing that right? But at any rate, Mary, Lucy, and her other sister, Miss Boardman, who was married, and then they lived here. As a matter of fact, they lived on the corner of Laurel and Emory. I've got a picture of that house. One of the houses, they lived in several different houses, but this is one of the houses they lived in, if you want to see that. But at any rate, they were from Minnesota, and they were very intelligent, wonderful ladies that they weren't going to sit still. They had to be busy all the time, and they loved to read. And so they had run out of books, and back then everybody was not close together, you know, they were scattered kind of apart all up in the hills and so forth. And so they decided, the sisters decided that why don't we have a library? And so later on that afternoon, their friends, Ms. Knott and let's see, these 2 ladies were from Kentucky, Ms. Knott and the other one, I can't think of the other one. But at any rate, they came for tea. And so the Leduc ladies told them about their idea of starting a library. And so they all thought it was a wonderful idea. So the very next day, they went out and canvassed the 24 houses that were in this community. At that time, there were 24 houses, 3 stores, and the Tryon Hotel, which is Oak Hall. It was there, and the church, Holy Cross, and let's see, something else. Depot was a post office. I'm not sure what was it then or not, but anyway, that's what was here. And so they canvassed all of those houses, and everybody was so enthusiastic, loved the idea, and so they had a meeting the very next week, and because Sidney Lanier had moved here because of his health, a lot of people moved to Asheville because of tuberculosis, and so but a lot of people didn't like it. Emma Payne Erskine was one of them that moved up there, and she didn't like it because she thought it was very depressing. and with all the, tuberculosis and so forth. But people told them about the climate and so forth of Tryon, and so here they come on the train, and they come down. But you couldn't stop and salute at that time. You had to keep on going to Spartanburg. You went through. So, but anyway, they came down, and so that's how Lanier Library got started. And they were very civic-minded, and they worked very hard to raise money. And they did this by, they had lots of teas and cookies and sold jams and jellies, and they had programs. And as a matter of fact, my cousin from way back, Jane Scriven Haywood, had a program here. And I have her book that she gave the program on, it's Brown Jackets. And so that's a long time ago, but she gave a program. But at any rate, and lots of people gave them money. And I think that because of the weather and because of the enthusiasm of these ladies, these 5 ladies, then it attracted other people, other ladies who wanted to get involved. And so a lot of them did. And a lot of them who came from up north had a good bit of money, and so they donated it to the library. And so at any rate, they were very civic-minded, and this is important. I gotta find it so that, because I didn't know this, but they said, okay, so the civic affairs was through a committee of 3 authorized to talk with the male citizens of the Village Improvement Society in regard to buying land for a much-needed cemetery for Tryon. In the spring of 1892, the land was bought, and a committee of gentlemen appointed to survey and lay out the plots. The club voted to contribute to the society the $42 in the treasury, as well as the fees received from book circulation during the coming year to help with the cemetery expenses. Now, to me, for the library to be formed in the year 1890, and then in 1892 they're able to give $42. Well, $42 was a lot of money back then. And that, I think those ladies were very, very industrious. But let me tell you, I have to read this because you gentlemen in here may get upset with me. But anyway, so 4 years had passed since the land for the cemetery was bought. And Mrs. George E. Morton, whose records of the Lanier Club these writers owe a debt of gratitude, commented, "Later the women of the club learned to give no hints and ask no favors, but to do it themselves." And so, they got the cemetery going again. So then in, let's see, I think it was 1913, let me get this and it'll tell us. They started moving the cemetery from Holy Cross, let's see. Yeah, that's when it was, 1913. They moved the Tryon Cemetery in 1913 to the current cemetery. And there were black people in the cemetery, and they moved those people, the black people, to the Garrison First Baptist Church, which was located on Highway 176 across from the McFarland Funeral Home. Now, I don't know in this writing whether they're talking about the present funeral home or the very first funeral home. The very first funeral home that we had was started by Frank Sr. McFarland, and it was where the Home Trust Bank is now. And that was the very first funeral home. And so, at any rate, so I don't know whether the Garrison Baptist Church was across the street from that one or across the street from the one that's here now. So, but they did baptize the people in the Erskine Pond. So I'm thinking maybe that they're talking about maybe on Wilderness Road or Erskine or somewhere in that area. But they, I know that it was a really hard thing to do to get all that accomplished and everything, because later on, then when they were still excavating the property and building things on Holy Cross, they did find some skeletons. And so they took those though and put them in the Tryon Cemetery.
Francis,
Yes.
thank you very much. Our next guest, Jerry Soderquist, a tireless researcher and worker at the cemetery. I met Jerry when he was organizing cleanup days at the cemetery with the great John Vining many years ago. And I know you've done yeoman's work in finding where the people are buried and making a great research that's very valuable to us. And we would like to see what you can tell us about the recent history of the cemetery, some of the research and some of the individuals that are buried there, and what stands out in your memory about when you got involved with the cemetery, and some of those stories from the past that we, as I said before, everybody on the commission right now is standing on the shoulders of you and Ambrose and many others to get where we are today. So take off and tell us what you got.
That's quite a lead-in. I'd say that my wife and I retired early, or child-free, and we lived in the city of Lake Forest, Illinois, and we were considering a move, and we had my wife's brother had moved to North Carolina. Previously he was an FBI agent, now he was a SBI agent for the state, so we made regular visits here along with my wife's mother, who had moved here also. My wife, having the summers off, we knew there was a move in our future, and she would take the summers, and at one point each summer she would visit a different town in North Carolina and see if we could come up with where is going to be our final resting place. And each year she went to a different town, and she came back and visited Tryon, and she says, "I think I found it," which fully supported our thoughts about where we're going to finally retire, and that's what we did. She became involved with a lot of different organizations, as I did. When we first moved here, she was very active in the history of the town and very much involved with the Tryon Garden Club and Pearson Falls. In the earlier times, we both volunteered for any number of organizations, but one of which I was involved with the Tryon Garden Club and the Parks Committee of Tryon, who was headed up by John Vining. John and I are good friends and did a lot of things within the town, and there came a point where he said, we need to split up all the different parks that we're overseeing as part of the Parks Committee, and he was splitting up parks and people, and it turned out that I volunteered for the cemetery, and that was the lead-in really of me being involved with the cemetery. My whole life has been involved in land planning. I was retired architectural engineer and did a lot of research on houses, particularly in this area, and of course back where I was living in Lake Forest. It's interesting that we came to town and we parked the car in front of the Fine Arts Center, and there was a sign in the park that said Arthur Farwell Park. And I thought, could it be? In the city of Lake Forest, I have been in the Farwell House. That everything is connected to everything.
Yeah.
So, yes, we made the move here. It was very, very good for us. We became very much involved in different organizations throughout the time we had been here. And as a part of being a member of the cemetery commission, it was John Vining who suggested, you know, that, hey, the cemetery committee is going to be your home for the rest of the work that we're doing as far as the parks are concerned. So that is where I ended up being chair of the cemetery committee. Now, the research that one goes into looking at that, and I think I brought a lot of pictures here, that I took pictures of many of the monuments that are in the cemetery, and I have to say that those that are military monuments, most of those were cleaned personally by John Vining. He had a long history of helping the military people, and particularly having to do with the monuments in the cemetery. So he did a lot of cleaning of that. So as a result of John Vining's suggestion that I become involved with the Tryon Cemetery, really the history of that has been really a joy for me and for my wife as well. We traveled the cemetery often because we go through there enough that some of the pictures that I took, and there's one spectacular picture, we happened to be driving towards the cemetery on the day we had a snowstorm, and I had my camera with me, and I was able to take a picture of the snow on the trees with a blue sky, because the storm was over. And you know, that something like that has a lot of people in town that has made them interested much more than just going there, is to see something like that. So yes, I've been involved along with my wife, and we have done a lot with the monuments that are out there. I find it extremely interesting to look at the monuments and see that so many of the people that are buried in that cemetery are from Europe. And that really is an indication that this was a place where people were coming to Tryon, having to do with the arts and crafts. And when a person goes through, or the family goes through the process of burying their family member and indicating on the tombstone that they are here and their home was in Europe and wherever it was. I mean, it's just fascinating to see so many people ending up in Tryon having been born in Europe.
When you first got involved with John,
Yes.
what kind of shape was the cemetery in those days?
It was in disrepair, no question about it. It's been difficult all along to see if we could get the grass cut. I will say that there was an old water system in the cemetery which has, all fallen apart, and we constantly ask if there's a chance of us getting a new water system. John Vining, when he came to clean the monuments, he put a garbage pail full of water in his pickup truck, and he used that as the water source for cleaning monuments. So in the near the end of the number of days that I became stepping away as chairperson of the cemetery, wouldn't you know it, the new water system showed up. Because we've been pushing that for years.
Well, there have been a lot of positive changes at the cemetery over the years, as you know, and a great deal of it is because of the town of Tryon saying, you know, we own this and we're proud of it and we want it to look better for everybody. And everybody knows that Alan Peoples has been a very active participant in expanding the grounds of the cemetery and been a most valuable commissioner because he keeps the town attention on the wonderful grounds at the cemetery.
I totally agree.
And with that, Alan, would you like to share some of your insights and tell us what the vision for the future at Tryon Cemetery is?
Well, first off, let me say thank you particularly to this young man and that young lady.
I agree.
Very neat. Because what happened is, as the mayor, I went over there shortly after I got elected the first time in 2001. I went, oh my goodness, what have we done? Or rather, what haven't we done? Because we hadn't done anything. The grass was past my knees. Stones were turned over everywhere. Trees were down across places. And I can't even remember the older gentleman's name now that passed away a few years ago, and he was buried there and moved. But Ambrose Mills and I and a couple of others got there and got started. And several times we were trying to get up leaves, and the town didn't have the money. We didn't have a leaf pickup anymore. So I got my track and cross country team to come over there. We raked it a couple of times and moved stuff. I got a bunch of people to come in and help, and we brought chainsaws and cutters and cut stuff away. It still looked bad, but it looked better. And then Ambrose and I just kept going. We just kept fighting. We just kept pushing. I pushed through 5 managers to finally set aside enough money for us to have some money. And I think that you embarrassed him or something because we got some money last year. I couldn't get it. So I don't know what it was I was doing wrong. I wasn't smiling right. But the truth was it wasn't there. And the same thing, we tried to get water there for years, and that wasn't able to do that. And finally we were able to get a little money. We got ahead. And the first year we worked together, I said, you need to be chairman. He goes, no, that's the mayor's job. I said, no, because I knew what kind of work he would do. Well, when he left, I knew what kind of work this person would do. So I nominated her, and we all voted her in. She didn't get voted. And that's the 2 smartest decisions I made about the cemetery right there. To step back a little, the LeDuc sisters who got this building started, the design was done by William Strong, who built the house across the street from me, and his 2 nieces built the house I lived in, and they were from Duluth. So when I went to Duluth, I think in 2018 or 19, I saw some of the places that they lived in, saw some of the things that were there, and they had finesse, if you will. They had education. And they brought it here and, whoa, all these people are pretty good. They've got things going on that need to be going on. And so since then, we've been a mecca. And you're correct, people argue about what it is. I will argue that the railroad brought it, and the people followed, and there were good people that followed.
Yeah.
And I like that cemetery so much, I bought 42 plots out there, and I've sold 9 of them. So I got to clean it up. That's where I got to rest.
So you have that there's places in the cemetery that can expand for different services, not burial, but spreading of the ashes and such. Could you tell us about that a little bit?
What I had is basically 3 feet by 3 feet, 21 by 22, I think it is. So I basically said you can buy a 3 by 3. If you want to put 2 people in it, it's $1,000, but it's $500. And I sold 2 last week. And so I keep half of it to pay back for what I paid for it, and I give the other half. And this is so we can turn it into the town, put it in the cemetery committee fund. And it grows slowly, but it grows. So I have, I think 35 of those for sale. And I just think that there was a book I read once by a gentleman in South Carolina, and I can't remember the name of the book. But what he says is, if you want to know what kind of town you have or what it does for its citizens, go visit your cemetery. That answers you for anything else. And I think he's probably right.
Well, you know, we're mighty thankful that the town has stepped up, and we've gotten some funding from the Community Foundation, which is just wonderful. And thanks to Gary, and we've gotten a lot of the headstones repaired, and we're cleaning them. Every week we meet and clean a section. But things are really going well, and the town is keeping the place looking good, grass cut, and we much appreciate that.
Can I say something just right quick?
Yeah, sure.
Is that, Alan, when I was a young girl, way back then, then the Polk County Cemetery, the Tryon Cemetery was the place to go. It was like a social gathering.
Really?
A lot of people went to the cemetery. And if you had a burial, you had the burial and the flowers went on and so forth. You went home, you came back, you got the pictures and all that. It was a big thing. It really was. But of course we didn't have, telephone. Nobody knew who died. So you keep going to the cemetery to see who died last week. That's the kind of thing.
And I think that's true in any small town.
Yeah.
It probably still is.
Yeah.
They get the word out faster, but then you pay your respects.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you do in a small town.
That's right.
And the people who came here from other places adopted that. And we got people here that are in our cemetery that it's almost unimaginable how intelligent and how successful they were in the things that they've done. And they came here and they found their Mecca. I call it our acre of diamonds, and I think I'm right.
Yep. And there's, as I understand it, there's some property that the town owns that we can still, in the future, possibly do some more park-like.
I started that about 2008, trying to figure out, the county had some land, there was some foreclosed land there. We got some of it, and I know we purchased some more, but I don't remember how much. At one time, there was up to 4 or 5 acres there, but there was an argument, and the family couldn't agree on what to do with it. So I think they voted the majority of them. That part's put into the land trust. I don't know how many acres, but some of that is put into the land trust. But we do have room to expand. Again, if you're going to do that, what I want is ashes or scatter. That's it. Right. No large headstones. And one of these days, right beside my wife, I'm going to have a small headstone, and I want one of those flags there because I'm retired military. I want one of those too. So,
when we were putting out flags for Memorial Day recently, Veterans Day as well, just about everybody that was in the military is connoted on their headstone. The pride of, patriotism is just rampant in the cemetery.
yes, and all history that people served here. You can't see it, but I got 3 notebooks there and one here. This is full of Tryon artifacts, postcards, small pictures. I got a box full of artifacts over there. I'm telling you, it's an acre of diamonds. If you come here and you don't like it, I'm not sure you're going to get along anywhere.
Now, we got a little question and answer period. If anybody has anything they would like to go back and talk about. Yes, ma'am, you're up.
Yes, I would like to know what the address is of the cemetery.
Markham Road, do we need a number? 425 Markham.
Yeah.
My second home.
And since we've all gotten involved in this in the last year or so, thanks to Gary and Nancy, there's so many people that are natives here that don't know anything about the cemetery, haven't been there, couldn't find it with 2 hands and a flashlight. And so this is going to help us. We're coming up on the 150th anniversary, and we're going to have some special events and get people to come see the sacred ground. And it certainly is. There's captains of industry and people, like I said, from all over the world who found Tryon and never left. And it's just about as special a place as we've ever been, certainly.
Do you know who the oldest person is buried over at the cemetery? Do you know?
Say again?
Who the oldest person is that's buried at the cemetery?
Well, let's see. Mr. Rogers just died a few years ago. He was 107.
Well, Katie Peak. She's 109 years old,
Oh, really?
and she was buried there, and I went to her funeral. She took care of me when I was a little girl. She was my second mother,
And what was her name?
Katie Peak,
Uh-huh.
Aunt Katie. That was them. And she was buried over there. Of course, back then, way back, and I don't want people to be offended, I'm not going to be offended, but they had the black people were off the side of the hill. They didn't have they weren't buried in really nice places. They were way off down the hill. So Aunt Katie is down there. She had no money, and so after her funeral, a couple of years later, I wanted to make sure that she had a marker on her grave. So I went back and I couldn't find it. And I know that one had sunken down in the ground, and so a lot of the black family moved them from the Tryon City Cemetery to the Good Shepherd Cemetery. So I don't think Aunt Katie, she didn't have any relatives that would have moved her, and I don't think Aunt Katie had enough money to be moved to the Good Shepherd Cemetery. So I think she's still there. So I'll tell you what I did. I went over there where I'm pretty sure where she was buried, and I got a handful of dirt, and I took it up, and I put it where my grandfather's buried. And so I put that beside him on the grave up there so she'd be with them. And somehow, some way, I want to try to get a headstone for her. Somehow, if I could just find and make sure where the grave is, if that's the problem. Because they were just buried in, old pine box, and they just destroyed, they rotted,
We have a great researcher that's helping us a lot, Beth Radley, and I would just about bet that between she and Jerry, I bet they can get really close.
I would love it.
It would be worth doing, that's for sure.
I love it. Thank you so
Any,
much.
One of the other things that came about, and I didn't realize this until I started reading back. I don't remember the name of the artist that was in France when World War I started. And the Germans were moving there, so he moved here. Very famous artist. And people followed him in droves, European artists. I've got a list of some of those that Mike McHugh had done and researched. And so they came here and painted, so I bought a lot of art. I have 220 pieces of Tryon art.
Oh, I know you got a great gallery, you really do.
I think it should be noted that Mike McHugh has done a lot of research about the cemetery, and has a website up, TryonHistory.org. It's not run by the town, but it's Mike's own website, and it's very extensive about the cemetery, and then also discusses a lot about the chapel that was to be built as a part of the cemetery. And that chapel, I spent a lot of time trying to get a copy of that, and that original drawing is in archives in Asheville, the Asheville History Museum. And the first time I went up there to get it, he showed it to me. I says, I want to get a copy of that. He says, we don't do something like that here. And it was almost another year went by before I convinced somebody in the organization that, hey, I represent the place where this was to be built, the chapel for the cemetery. And I finally did get a copy of it. And now people can see it out in the public in architectural renderings of other things happening in town. So there's still hope that someday it might be built, but it'll be a long time.
It's an absolutely beautiful structure.
Yes.
if it doesn't ever get off the paper, it's still something that's a wonderful historical piece of art. Any questions from the peanut gallery over there?
I think this was very, very helpful. A lot of good information, things that I didn't know, and I appreciate very much your contributing to this today. It's a big step forward for us in maintaining the history.
Well, we appreciate everybody's participation here. Our memories of the fabric of the history of Tryon, and by sharing them today, you've ensured that the stories behind these names and headstones won't be forgotten. As a reminder to everyone here, today's session was recorded. This audio will be preserved as part of our ongoing historical documentation project for the cemetery, ensuring future generations can listen to these voices. Thank you all for coming out and supporting local history and honoring the legacy of the Tryon Cemetery. We are most grateful and appreciative of this record that will help us all in the future in the history of this wonderful place and the sacred grounds that are the Tryon Cemetery.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
very much.
May I ask you a question? Since you all are here that are involved with it, would you like to have this posted on the museum YouTube channel?
Oh,
Why not?
absolutely.
Okay.
If you could do that for us, that'd be
Really good.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I can't thank enough, Nancy Gray is the most organized person that I've been around in a long time, and she has a mover and a shaker, and she has shaken this town to realize their obligation to the history, past and future. Yes,
The
sir.
truth is, as mayor, I couldn't get money, but she did.
She's a great organizer, and we're mighty happy to have her as the chairperson for our committee. And this has been a wonderful thing. I think it's something that we might want to do again next year.